lead on that?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And we'll talk about that.
So I wanted to talk a little about the perceptions of what makes a movie a success and what makes a movie a flop. Uh, the more I really dived into it, there's a lot of intricacies, uh, to from a company standpoint, what they call a success versus what us as a public calls a success is very, very different animals. They're looking at profit margin and marketability of intellectual property, where us as the consumer, in the market, we just like content. If it's our genre, or if it's all our content that we truly enjoy, uh, that's if they succeed with that, and it matches what we have in our mind for this particular content, then and it's good acting, it's good content, good effects, then we're happy as a customer. Uh, but when you start looking at some of the companies like Disney and Disney Plus, when they start putting content on streaming, um, they have a little bit different gauge of what they consider to be a success. Until I started doing a little bit of research, I did not know how much money guys like Disney Plus and stuff make in residuals, in licensing of of merchandise. So they are really willing to accept a loss from the expense that they have in production.
Do you mean like with like the streaming services, like the way companies were willing to take a loss until they, I guess, figured it out? Like Max trying to mimic the success of Netflix, Disney Plus trying to mimic the success, taking losses until. And I heard that this year they're finally starting to make profit. I don't know if that was the area you're going to, or you're talking more of the theaters. Are you?
That is definitely a part of it. Definitely a part of it. So they're looking to recoup, their money, but they're also making residuals off of advertisement. They're making residuals off of marketing items that really hits their bottom line in a different way. And for like some of the Sony and Disney stuff that you had mentioned before that I had never thought of, and until I really started looking into it, some of the movies like that they dropped basically to keep that timer that they have to own some of that intellectual property alive. So they kind of had to release a movie, even if they knew it was not they were gonna take a huge loss on. But for some of the stuff like Star Wars and Disney, the money that those companies, they've turned into like a licensing company. That's what they are. They're licensing their intellectual property to other companies and making millions and millions and millions of dollars off all that residual money. So even the content that they drop just to keep the intellectual property alive, some of the Star Wars stuff, they might have I hate to say like the Acolyte and stuff, but stuff like that, even if they don't get a return off of their investment, just to keep the Star Wars intellectual property, in the new in the public eye, for them, they can take some pretty hard hits on some of this property. And I mean, I would still, even like the Acolyte helmet of the one guy the Stranger wore. I bet the residual that they've made off the marketing and licensing of that helmet piece, and just some of the marketing stuff that they recouped off of Acolyte as residuals, probably hit their bottom line there, and they just shrug that off.
Go a little bit further into that, like going into like when Baby Yoda was first introduced. I mean, even if the Acolyte was starting to it was a success, I think, originally when that first season started, but when the second Baby Yoda was what they named it, because we didn't know his real name at the time, was introduced, people lost their minds.
Yes,
that's the toys. I mean, people who probably weren't even watching the show. And when I'm imagining some whoever the Star Wars nerd in the house that was watching it, and then their spouse, husband or wife, boyfriend or girlfriend, doesn't matter, probably ignoring it, not really paying attention in the other room, and they're like, "Hey, honey, look at this little guy," and then the next words were probably, oh, and that was it. Then the marketing and the machine would start. Yeah, took over. Yeah. So is that kind of where you're going with it, like a little bit?
Yeah, somewhat. And you know, those guys, they had to have a premonition, and they're purposely dropping some of this content. Going, look at this guy. This little toy or whatever is going to make us millions off of Grogu. You know,
You sound like Dr. Evil.
Millions of dollars. And you know, they're just seeing dollar signs, but at the same time, you know, they're looking at from a business standpoint, they're looking at, you know, a cost risk, you know, profitability matrix, you know, where they're going, okay, it's going to cost us this much to produce this series or this film or whatever. And they know they're going to recoup this much, but they also know that they're going to get all this back in marketing dollars in licensing agreements from other items. And they can absorb some of these losses. And, you know, this idea of success and failure, you know, gets tough when you start looking at it from the consumer side. There's been a lot of, you know, AAA content movies that, you know, that did horrible. They did horrible, and they got horrible reviews, and they were not well received by the public when they had did have a lot going for them. Which, you know, it's like John Carter was one that, you know, really tanked, and they had a huge budget. They had every benefit that they could. You know, you had some top tier actors. You had a special effects budget that was out of this world. I like
John Carter.
They had everything they needed to succeed, but it didn't resonate right with the public, and just didn't do well. And you have others that are, you know, so if you want to drop in some of the classics that really weren't, they didn't move the needle financially for a lot of these companies. But later they were, you know, they are now a classic and loved by the public.
If I can find that one. John Carter of Mars, right?
Yeah. And, but you know, you get some of the classics, even stuff like Fifth Element did not move the needle much for the studios. But residuals, you know, throughout the years and stuff, it killed it. And the merchandise that come from that still to this day is bringing them residual money.
Right.
But it's very, you know, it's a gamble a lot of the times you when you start looking at the money that they're throwing out for this particular film or this particular series. And, you know, sometimes they are taking a risk. They are looking at, you know, as the business, they are definitely looking at some of these statistics. They're doing, you know, market reviews to see, you know, what does the market feel like? How are they going to receive this intellectual property? It's going to be popular. You know, they'll do the public surveys and stuff like that. And then, you know, you also have a lot of executives, and you also have a lot of influential people, you know, like you know, Elon Musk for Tesla stuff. You know, if he wants to do something, he's not gonna ask public.
Yeah, he's rich enough to not even ask permission.
He's gonna make an executive decision.
He's like, I want to make Skynet. I'm gonna make Skynet. Yeah.
So you know, that stuff happens in Disney, and you have seen that happen in some instances, and sometimes that's been rewarding. You know, especially some of the Marvel series and stuff is. You've had some guys make some executive decisions, really put themselves out there and really hit it out of the park, which you want to see. It's awesome. And you've also, you know, you've had some negativity, and you've had some things that weren't necessarily well received, but it's all about, you know, the you know, you don't want to do quality versus quantity, but it's still content. It's still keeping the intellectual property alive, and it's still putting merchandise and marketing stuff out into the world regardless. So that, you know, that has a boomerang effect, and that will come back to them, you know, in one shape or form.
Do you think that, like, that was a good example, like with Marvel, do you think that, because a lot of people feel that wrong camera, which one am I on here? There I am. But a lot of people think that for Marvel, for example, it's been overkill with especially with the TV shows, with the hit and miss factor of it. Like, wouldn't oversaturating with what a lot of people are, and I already have my own opinion about it, but what a lot of people are feeling is like mediocre content. Wouldn't that hurt you more than help you in your overall brand? Like originally Star Wars, for example, they had a plan to do a Star Wars movie every year or every other year. They've pumped the brakes on that because it took all it did was take a couple of movies to not cross the inevitable $1 billion, and then just like what did the Joker say? And everyone loses their minds. You know, they hit the panic button, and they got so. What do you think? What do you say about that? Like, is oversaturating? Couldn't that hinder you? Mediocrity fatigue it could be setting in. Is it because
I'm sure it could to an extent,
mm-hmm.
but us as content viewers, we are pretty ravenous for content. We go through content like a starved person.
Yeah,
we binge, series and stuff. We go through a lot of content, and we talk about it when there's a lull, right?
Yeah.
Man, there's nothing dropping right now. There's no good series, and we're in a lull of content. And it does not take long for people, the Indians start getting restless.
Yeah. The Marvel is the perfect. No, Star Wars is the perfect example of this because you see a lot of people constantly bitching about what they're getting when something from Star Wars drops. But like right now, let some years go by without anything new, and all of a sudden, when they're complaining about not getting anything at all. But when something drops, you attack it, and when nothing drops, you're like, where the hell is my content? So it's like you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. So in regards to the machine for like Star Wars, for example, that we need to feed and keep it cranking. What do you think if you were Bob Iger? And I'm sure you have him on speed dial. He's listening to every suggestion that you're making out there. What do you do? What do you do for all the people who, no matter what you come out with, you're gonna get attacked? It's too woke. It's too this. I don't like the fact that a girl has a lightsaber. Whatever the issue is. But then you go 3 years without dropping anything. It's like, where's my damn Star? So it's like, what do you want? Like, how would you solve that problem? That conundrum?
Being the old classic adage of the show must go on, right?
Yeah.
So
you just keep going.
You as a company, you have to keep producing product.
Mm-hmm.
You have to always be working. There's no pause to to revenue generation and to productivity as a business standpoint. You pause, you die.
Mm-hmm.
It costs more money to sit stagnant than it does to expend money for future resources.
We used to, and I agree with you on that, because we used to champion people for what we used to say it all the time: take a risk, take a chance. It might not work out, but you took the chance. Maybe The Force Awakens and the Rise of Skywalker and all that stuff. Maybe it wasn't the best move, but I would rather that than like 15 years, 20 years of nothing. Like I'm sorry. As much as I love Star Wars, I can't go another 30 years. Remember the time between episode, what was it? Episode 4, 5, was it 4, 5? Let's begin with episode 4. Yeah, 4, 5, and 6. Between episode 6 and then when we got episode 1, remember all that time that it took, and then for 9, like what, 8, 9, and 10 or whatever it was. I don't want to go 30 years without something new, and we're going to be having the same conversation about the blue milk and what Luke and his uncle and the aunt. I don't want to keep having that same old Tatooine conversation. Star Wars is so big. I want to expand. I love the fact that the Mandalorian came out there. As much shit that Kathleen Kennedy is getting from on the producer side, and a lot of it is well deserved. But if it wasn't for her, we wouldn't have the Mandalorian. She greenlit that. It was her call. She greenlit Andor. She greenlit those things. As much shit that she gets and deserves for a lot of things, she made a lot of great choices. And I'm like, just like what you're saying, cranking it out, getting it out there. I feel like they're learning. To me, this goes back to when Bob Chapek was in charge. When Bob Chapek took over, it was about content, but they sacrifice quality. Now that Bob Iger's back, I feel like the quality is back, and I feel like Star Wars and MCU they're finally getting back into what made let's make Marvel great again. I guess that's the best way I could put it. I feel like that's what they're doing, but that's just me. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I mean, yeah, you definitely can see there's been some changes, in some shifting of what they want to do, but ultimately, I mean, I think that just you keep on chugging along, and there is a bit of a you get a learning curve, right?
Mm-hmm.
When your public's desires and your public's demands are changing of content, you have to change and you have to grow with it.
Right.
And in doing that, you got to find the right formula. If your old formula is no longer working, you got to find a new formula. So when you're doing that, you got to put some tests out there and see how the market responds and how the public absorbs that content. I think some of they've definitely had some upsets where some of the previous, let's say, formulas that they put in place,
Mm-hmm.
that they expected to be a huge success, the public had changed. The want, the need, the ask from the public had they had different expectations or a bigger expectation, and they had to do a rapid switch to adjust to that.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately, if you look at the success, I mean, what would you say some of the more successful intellectual properties have been? The biggest one.
I mean, recently today, or overall,
in
or
the past, let's do a 10-year.
Mm-hmm.
In the past 10 years, what would you say has been hugely successful intellectual?
In the past 10 years, I mean, Marvel, I guess that would be the MCU. I mean, they're the number one studio out there. I mean, they're almost averaging $1 billion per movie. I would think them but I think the number one the number one property. What's the? I'm gonna stumble on the word. Intellectual property? What is it? Is if I'm not mistaken, it's Pokemon. But that's technically the correct answer. I think that's the number one property, if I'm not mistaken. But I feel like this is a trick question, and you're setting me up.
The one that pops into my mind is Harry Potter.
Yeah.
And look to see what type.
And they're coming up with a new series, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look at the past 10 years, the juggernaut of marketing and of merchandise revenue that they have brought in over the past 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And there haven't been that much content that they've dropped over the past 10 years.
Yeah.
That's just been, a little touches. When did the last movie drop? It hadn't been in 10 years, but I think it's pretty close. Right?
Screw the last movie. Remember when that video game came out? I mean, like it was years. It was years after a movie since a movie has come out, and then the second they sprinkled that game out, it was like the magic was back again. So I'll agree with you on that. Say what you will about the Harry Potter world. The second that game dropped, it was like the magic was back. Everybody was buzzing, and they were like, "Give me more of this Harry Potter." So I'm very curious what's going to happen when that series drops later on, because we haven't had a Harry Potter movie in a while. The books were like in the 90s and the early 2000s. The movies came out; they were a big hit. It's been years since the last movie. The video game came out. People went crazy.
Play.
Mm-hmm.
Like
the Beast, what was it?
Fantastic
Beast, and that.
That's still.
I heard that was Harry Potter.
Yeah, I mean that's still the same intellectual property.
But when that video game came out, it was like everybody went crazy. So I'm very curious on how people are going to act when that
even right
series
now
comes out.
Well, we were in Austin for a wedding this last weekend, and coming back, they're having that Harry Potter haunted forest experience up there.
Yeah.
That's still a huge draw.
Dude, I'm thinking about getting those wands here in the studio here.
My wife is at Universal right now, and I can guarantee you, she is at Harry Potter Land.
Right.
Yeah, and I know when that new the new portion of Harry Potter opens at Universal, she and me are gonna be there.
Yeah.
And that's keeping that intellectual property alive and keeping it on. It's on the tip of the tongue. Everybody's talking about it. It makes it through the social media. It makes it through that media juggernaut.
Yeah.
And stays relevant. And with that relevancy of that intellectual property, that's dollar sign.
Yeah. Dude, Todd McFarlane, let me see if I can I'm gonna work on this game. Oh, there we go. Todd McFarlane said it a long time ago. Remember he was talking about Spawn. He's like, hey, why, I mean, you're making so much money with the Spawn. Let me fix this right here. The Spawn comic book. Why do you want to make a movie? He was like, because he knew. He said the big screen, the movie screen or silver screen, whatever you want to call it. All it is just a big giant T-shirt. It's just the way to get the property out there. I'm like, yeah, okay, I got the #1 comic book. Okay, now what? Put it on that giant screen with that what he called a moving T-shirt. And that way you get it out there, because the more people, because there's millions of people, there's way more people who don't buy comic books. Yeah, I got the #1 comic book, but there's a lot of people, there's way more people who would rather see a movie versus buying a comic book. So get my property out there. So the more you expand and whatnot, whether it's video games, whether it's movies, whether it's, yeah, you're right. I agree. It's just, and we got what we just called the machine. Once the corporate overlords, once they got their grips on you, yeah, they'll find ways to get their properties out to you. Yeah, one way or the other.
The licensing dollars for intellectual property and just intellectual content in general. I was, until I started getting into an industry that dealt with that, I was completely unprepared for the cost and expense when you start learning what it takes to bring a product to market. And everyone, you have to pay your piece of the pie to pay for licensing, even for stuff like Bluetooth and stuff. So it is a it's its own industry.
You almost
it is truly its own industry.
You almost sound like like Michael Douglas when he's like, greed is good, like all like Wall Street. You almost sound like you're making like a Wall Street pitch right here.
I mean, it's tough. I mean, you don't want to like, we love our intellectual content. We love our stories and stuff. But if it wasn't making money, we wouldn't have it.
Yeah.
If it wasn't bringing money to the, it's like cart horse question, but if it wasn't bringing in money, we wouldn't have the big screen things that we have now. We wouldn't have them in quite as much luster, and it wouldn't be as big and as exposed as what we have. Catch-22.
Yeah,
you want the content, you pay for.
Yeah. As the great DJ Quick said, if it doesn't make dollars, it doesn't make sense. So there you go, little hip hop lesson there.
Very true.
But I once agree. Yeah, thanks, man. That is a topic that we got to dive into more. We should probably do more of a deep dive in, because I like the way you worded it when you text me about it, the Matrix, about the whole thing.
It's very, I mean, it can get super, super deep.
Yeah.
To think of all of the different angles that the companies look at when trying to put something in front of a customer.
Yeah.
But it must be nice, of course, to have that type of budget for people and have that many bodies that you can throw at a problem to work towards resolution. So
I'm looking to go back to college and go back to school for a marketing degree. So hopefully I'll be able to give more of a better insight into what it all means later on, because I'm definitely going back to school for marketing. And I definitely, hopefully, I'll be edgy. I'll act all snooty about it. Well, Rob, I'll tell you exactly what the Matrix says about this. As Professor, Smith told me yesterday in class. So hopefully, because I definitely plan to be that pompous about it when I'm done.
Knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power. It's funny. It makes me laugh that you think that you have a grasp on the reality of marketing. But let me tell you exactly what I learned yesterday. But But yeah, let's let us know what you guys think about this topic that we're talking about here. Chime in, comment below if you're watching this after after this is live and whatnot, because I'm going to segmentize this, and let us know what you